marriage that had a friendly ghost who we called David, because we believed that it was the spirit of the former owner who had died in the house, in our bedroom. Well, we have had one other experience with a haunted house. It's a little house on North Lake Drive here in Lexington. It's right across from Lexington Elementary School. It's right across the little side street there from the St. Stephen's graveyard. So it's probably appropriate that it did have a ghost. We called him Mr. Quincy. The house was built in 1917, right before the United States got involved in World War I, by a man named Quincy Wingard. And he built it himself. He was, among other things, the town well digger, carpenter, and no telling how many other skills he might have had. But he built it for himself and his new bride, Mary. And they moved in. It was a two-story house, but the top floor was not finished at that time. I know all of this about the house because our landlord, Kristen Hook, her dad, left her the house, among other things, when he died. He was the solicitor, the Rick Hubbard of his time. He was the county prosecutor. And Phil had his law office in there. And of course, he had an office down at the courthouse, too, where he worked on prosecuting varlets and other offenders. But Mr. Quincy, we first discovered Mr. Quincy through the telephone system. We had a little console on our office manager's desk, and it would light up if you picked up a phone, or it would light up if someone was calling one of the lines in the house. I think we had like 8 lines at that time. And Hilda would know, our office manager would notice occasionally that one of the upstairs phones would light up on a day in which no one was upstairs. Mm-hmm. And she told my wife about it. She said, I wonder if there's something wrong with the phones. And Clive said, what do you mean? She said, well, from time to time I notice it looks like someone has picked up a phone upstairs because it lights up. And so I've clicked in to see if there's a conversation, and there isn't. Well, the real test of the idea was when Hilda began to hear people walking around upstairs when there was no one upstairs. The upstairs had been finished years before, and the news staff and the sports staff worked upstairs with me, and my wife and the sales staff and the graphic staff worked on the lower floor. So we were there 2 or 3 days a week. Most of the time, though, the sports staff and the news staff were out doing what reporters do. They were out covering stories. So on those days in which there was no one up there, Hilda would hear footsteps up there. And of course, in an old house like that, it was almost 100 years old at that time. It's probably 102 years old now. So she and my wife began to listen. And they would sometimes hear steps on the stairway too, going upstairs. One night, our son, Mark, he was still an undergraduate at Carolina, and he had come back to the office because he didn't have a computer at home, to work on a term paper for a class. And it was about 10 o'clock at night. And he heard steps coming, someone coming up the stairs. And of course, no one else he knew was in the building. And he thought maybe it was me, so he stood up, and no one came into the room. So he thought, that's really strange. And so he started looking through all the rooms upstairs, no one there. Went downstairs, no one there. So when he got home, he said, "Did you come back by the office?" And I said, "No, I've been here all night." He said, "Well, I had a real strange experience." He said, "I was upstairs. I didn't think anybody else was in the house. The doors were locked. And working on a term paper, and I swear I heard someone walk up the stairs." I said, "Well, that was probably Mr. Quincy just checking on you." Wanda Seitler was a very talented young woman who worked with us. She wrote our history column. She was a great sketch artist. And she was in, we had a real big newspaper coming up that week, so she was down at the paper with me on a Saturday getting pages ready for this large edition. And she had gone into the bathroom and closed the door and latched it, and she noticed a shadow. You know, there's always a little crack under the door. She noticed it looked like somebody walked past the door. Well, she knew no one else was upstairs. I was downstairs doing something. So when she came out, she looked around, looked in a couple of rooms upstairs, nobody there. So she came downstairs and she said, "Were you just upstairs a few minutes ago?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, I had the strangest sensation." She said, "It looked like someone walked past the bathroom door." I said, "Relax, it's just Mr. Quincy." My wife was upstairs one time, and she was the only time anyone ever saw Mr. Quincy. Where she was coming down the stairs, and there was on the landing, the stairs went down and to a landing and then down to the lower floor. And there were windows that looked out into the backyard. And in one of the panes, his face appeared. It was an elderly man with a beard. And it was there just for like a second or two, and then it just dissolved and went away. Has any of you ever had an experience like that? It was really strange. But we were in that house for 11 years, and we finally found another building and bought it. And I really miss Mr. Quincy because we don't have a ghost where we are now. But anyway, keep your eyes and ears sharp. There may be a spirit out there waiting to greet you. Mr. Quincy was a friendly ghost.